I'm here to make a very important announcement today, which is that I absolutely love M dashes and I refuse to stop using them. In case you haven't heard, M dashes are now considered a sign of AI fabricated writing. Apparently, they are a telltale sign that appears in many of the AI large language models. This has become so prevalent that a lot of people now consider it to be a tell of supposedly using AI. Not only has there been coverage of this in the news, I've actually been in informal conversations talking about emails where some people now say, oh, you shouldn't use M dashes. You should edit them out because if you include them, people will think you wrote this using AI. I find it to be completely outrageous and a violation of my rights as a writer. While I understand that that may be a valid concern for people who don't care a whole lot about their own literary style, for me as a writer who has long used lots of M dashes, sometimes too many, perhaps I lean on it a little too much, but I've always used lots of them. I love them. It's one of my favorite punctuation tools, and I care a lot about my personal style, and I absolutely refuse to change it because these machines are now stealing that from humans, because that's really what this represents. So the thing that's like so crazy is these AI models are trained on stolen writing from real writers. They then imitate some of our quirks and some of the features that often appear in good writing, which include lists of three and M dashes, and they use those because that's something that good writers have used in the past and present. Then when people use something that people have always used when writing, it's seen as supposed proof that we are using one of these AI tools, which is just like so insulting to me and my craft and my aesthetic preferences. We're seeing a similar thing where now AI writing is considered to be like, really pristine and perfect. It tends to be grammatically correct. It tends to not have errors that sometimes creep into human writing, to the extent that sometimes people are now putting typos and errors or leaving them in their own writing to not be mistaken for AI, which also really bothers me because it implies that people who do write well and who write correctly and who, like me, grew up always proofreading for the highest level of accuracy and not having errors and typos, we're now seen to be too good because machines write well and most people don't. And it's like, I was always a good writer. I was a good writer before AI ever existed. Do not imply that simply because my writing is good and clean and tends not to have errors and typos that it is AI, because it is not. So there were some very sad comments on a New York Times article about this phenomenon recently. One came from a nonfiction writer who uses M dashes as an element of their style. And when they were revising a work that had originally been written 20 years ago, left the M dashes in, somebody asked them if they used AI simply because that's a thing now. And I feel like this is also kind of coming from people who aren't paying that much attention to writing style necessarily. Sometimes they're reading quickly and not familiar with the author's work and or wouldn't think to use an M dash themselves. And so they were like, is this AI? And the person was like, I had M dashes in the writing when this was originally written 20 years ago. Another person raised the example of M Dashley Dickinson, which I love how they put that. That was so funny. So are people going to look back at her writing and be like, oh, she used AI? I mean, media literacy is so low at this point, and literacy in general and familiarity with old texts from the past, that I wouldn't be surprised if somebody confronted with that was like, oh, AI wrote this, it has M dashes in it. Somebody else notes, it's not that writers can't use M dashes, it's just that everything AI pumps out writing-wise is filled with them, and the liberal use of dashes is a good way to spot AI writing content. I don't know, I have reservations about this for the reasons that I stated previously. Some writers do like them. I like them. I always liked them. Maybe we use them a little too much at times, but now it's like, okay, if I have two of them on a page to set something else, does that set the AI detectors ringing? They go on to say, I love a good M dash, but since AI uses it like a tween uses emojis, I may definitely avoid it in my writing, which is unfortunate. Now, I understand that some people are choosing to make this choice now, but I refuse to do that. I refuse to cede an element of my human style to this AI monster. I just refuse. Why are we allowing AI to define what is allowed for writers now? That's a completely unacceptable state of affairs to me. Something else that's really sad is just anecdotally online, I've seen some people saying well, you can't tell what's AI generated or not these days. See the video I made last time. So I'm just not going to read anything that's written after 2023. And I get where they're coming from, but as a writer who has a book coming out in 2026, it just kind of hurts my heart a little bit. It's not my fault that this AI monster arrived before I finished my book. I would like to now highlight some examples of what would be seen perhaps these days as egregious M- use in books that I greatly admire, to show that M-dashes have a long and illustrious history in human writing. So this one is from The Mill on the Floss by George Eliot. Everyone loves Middlemarch so much, but I feel like Mill on the Floss is really underrated. The next one we have is Ton of French, The Likeness. I found a page that, I don't know, there's a few M-dashes on this page that's kind of suspicious. The good thing this book was published in 2008. Another potential AI criminal we have here is Herman Melville. I found a passage in Moby Dick, which is a book I greatly admire. There's a lot of M-dashes here. I don't know, man. Like, this is kind of suspicious. Here in Desert Solitaire, there is a paragraph with 2 M-dashes in it. I don't know. This is something I never thought I would have to deal with as a writer. I was always aware of the threat of not being published, of writing something unpopular or writing something that's not very good. I, in my younger days, never thought that I would be competing with algorithms that can generate language, and that I would also have to deal with the threat of people thinking that your writing is AI generated if you use certain stylistic features. It's just so insane, and I refuse to change my writing because of it, and I guess people can think what they will. As I mentioned in other videos, I have a novel that I am publishing soon, which I'm self-publishing. I was unable to get an agent. I think that's because the subject of the book is like not really in line with publishing trends right now. It's about 2 young French horn players who are competing for dominance in their youth orchestra, so it's about a very niche subject area. YA literature is very focused on romantasy, and then like books that seem to be informed by true crime, which is like fine. I'm glad those things are popular, like good for those people who are writing in those genres, but it's kind of like squeezed everything else out. I had been working on this book for several years. Every word within the book itself is completely written by me and not AI. In full disclosure spirit, I used AI to write like a punchy book blurb that I used like as a basis for my query letters. Like I didn't just include the blurb, but I like used it as a draft, and then like I revised it because I was having a really hard time coming up with like that hook for the letters, because that's what you have to do. You have to like come up with a really punchy hook, and just like a few sentences describe your book, which I was struggling with. But the book itself, zero AI. I've seen that some authors have started using like a human created stamp or something on their books, and I just like, I don't really like that. That should be the baseline. Like I shouldn't have to certify that my writing is human generated. That just feels so dystopian. But I guess that's where we are now. At the same time, like I guess similar to in the past, where like you can't control how people interpret what you write, and like people might have totally different takes on your own book than you did. I used like probably at least 50 M-dashes in the book. If some people think that means I used AI, there's nothing I can do to control that. I hope that like the writing style and the content of the book itself like is enough to show that it's not AI used, because the subject matter is very specific and could not have been created via AI prompts. And I hope that my writing style is like unique enough that it's obvious that it's not AI, but this is the world we live in today. I use a ton of M-dashes and I refuse to change it. I just do. So thanks for watching my rant. I'll see you in the next one.